I'm Brian Chesky. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Airbnb. October 2007, I moved to San Francisco, and I moved in with Joe Gebbia, who was one of my roommates. And I knew Joe from college. I had $1,000 at the bank, and Joe tells me, well, the rent is $1,150. So we have a problem. We don't have enough money to pay rent. Well, it turns out that weekend, an international design conference is coming to San Francisco. All the hotels are sold out, and we had this idea. We said, well, what if we just turned our house into a bed and breakfast for this design conference? Well, unfortunately, I didn't have any beds, but Joe had 3 air beds. So we pulled the air beds out of the closet, we inflated them, and we called it the Air Bed and Breakfast. If you would have told me, a number of years later that we'd be here in South Africa and we'd have 1.5 million homes around the world, I think that would be a pretty unlikely story. I think it's a pretty unique story. Just to give you an example, a lot of tech companies that were started, they kind of took off. So they became really popular in the matter of weeks. Our product, people did not think it was going to work in the beginning. Why would people stay in homes? And we had a very simple idea. We said, well, people love homes. That's why they live in them. Why wouldn't they just live in them when they travel? And you travel to be an insider. No one travels to be an outsider. And what better way to be an insider is to stay with the locals. So I think we had a unique insight that I think wasn't obvious to a lot of people. And I think now one of the biggest, most common questions I get is, well, why didn't I think of that? People say that a lot, but I think it wasn't as obvious at the time. And now it is becoming more obvious. In fact, we have nearly 1 million people every night, on a typical night, staying in Airbnb around the world. I think the main thing that's happening is the tourism market is experiencing a huge boom. 50 years ago, there were about 25 million people that traveled cross-border globally. That is now over 1 billion. And there are probably around 5 billion trips a year. And so you have all these countries that are traveling for the very first time, hundreds of millions of new travelers. One of the things we're disrupting, probably, if you want to use the word disruption, are, in the United States, a huge percent of people stay with friends and family when they travel. And this is an alternative to that. So it's not just the local hospitality. We have 30,000 homes in Africa. I would say that's, it's all relative. That's quite a few, though we have 1.5 globally, so it's a small percentage. But Africa is also growing really fast. Inbound travel, for example, to South Africa is growing. The travelers coming to South Africa is growing 250% a year. So, that's more than tripling every year. We have 10,000 homes in South Africa. So what's different from what I experienced? I would say that the passion and enthusiasm and the level of hospitality here in Johannesburg and also in Nairobi, where I was yesterday, is as passionate and intense as any place I've traveled to. And I was surprised. And the reason I was surprised is because the market's so young. And usually it takes a period of time for people to develop the passion and enthusiasm. But it seemed like people all just kind of found out about it and it was immediately familiar to them. But most things are universal. One of the biggest surprises isn't how different people are from around the world, it's how similar they are. Now you gotta the last 10% is different. So the last 10% means it needs to be localized to the language, you need local payment providers, we're launching the Airbnb guarantee, which is basically like a $1 million protection against theft and property damage. All those types of things you have to do locally, but most of the platform is designed to be global. And the people have, I think, in many ways, global values. We don't have any immediate plans to open an office here, though we do have a regional manager of Africa, Nicola, and he's actually here with us. He's here with me now, touring both Nairobi and Johannesburg. And I do see a very significant investment in Africa over the next 3 years, really significant. Whether or not that includes an office is still to be determined, but we can obviously come physically to be here, and I think that more people from Airbnb will be traveling here. I think that there appears to be obviously lower internet penetration. Fewer people seem to have smartphones. So I was just with about a dozen or a dozen and a half hosts, Johannesburg hosts not too long ago, and many of them said their friends had never heard about it. And I encountered some people who just heard about it. And I think that there's just not a lot of press about it. I mean, this certainly will help. and not a lot of people talk about it yet. I think we are very new still and very unfamiliar in Africa, and it's even in South Africa relative to, say, France, where like it seems like everyone's heard of it. There's a saying, Peter Thiel is one of our investors. He says the biggest change is to go from 0 to 1, not 1 to 2, and that's probably true. Meaning, turning on markets and getting people who've never heard of you to hear about you is obviously more significant than the next step after that. That kind of initial inception, initial growing of the markets are so critical, which is probably why Africa is so exciting, right? Like, it's relatively small percentage of our business, but it also suggests to me a continent of nearly 1 billion people with a fast rising, emerging middle class and internet penetration, which it seems like, you will know more than I will about the region, but it seems like the internet penetration is accelerating, and so that's a really good thing for us. I originally timed this trip to come here with President Obama for the Global Entrepreneur Summit, and it's the first time he came to Africa, first time he came to Kenya since he was elected president. And he kind of told this story while he was here about entrepreneurship is like planting a seed. And you plant seeds so that trees can grow, not for you, but so that your children or grandchildren can see it take shape. And I think his visit and what he's doing with entrepreneurship is very much planting a seed for the next generation of economic development throughout Africa. And I think that was very much what I was doing as I was here as an ambassador for entrepreneurship. And I think the thing that just surprised me was actually how far along I already was. And I wasn't expecting to educate people on entrepreneurship. And actually, I was educating entrepreneurs on how to actually grow their businesses, not how to start a business. It seemed like everyone had a business. That was pretty amazing. So that was actually really inspiring. And the only other thing I told them, is the last thing I'll say, is like 100 years ago, the really big companies in the world were American companies, and they mostly sold to Americans. Ford, U.S. Steel, companies like that. And with the internet, now they're not, you don't have just like American companies, you have global companies, right? Like Airbnb, we're in 191 countries. But most global internet companies, most of them are still American, right? Like Google, Facebook, Apple, they're all based out of America. And what I told the entrepreneurs is that the next step is sitting in front of me, KB, somebody who will create the next global company. And that global company could very well emerge from Africa. And the reason why is the playing field's leveling. And customers, I told them, do not care where you're from. What they care is that you made something they love. And anybody coming from anywhere can make something someone else loves.